Issues. This is Dave Arnold, your host of Cooking Issues, coming to you live from the heart of Manhattan, New York City, Rockefeller Center, Newsstand Studios. Joined as usual with John behind me. How you doing, John?
Doing great, thanks.
Yeah? Got Joe rocking the panels. How you doing?
I'm doing real well, man. Great to see a full stack studio.
Yeah, so Joe wants me to go back on the mic, but now I realize for the first time in my life that we got a squeaky mic stand. So it made we gotta like
I'll fix that.
We can't win. But I'm gonna pull it again. You guys are gonna hear a squeak. There you go. Over there in the upper left, we got Quinn. How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah? Good. Glad to hear it. Good to have you back on regular, and then travel down the coast down to Los Angeles. We got Nastasia the Hammer Lopez. How you doing?
Great.
You sound fantastic, Nastasia. What about Jackie Molecules? He always has a brighter sounding tone. You also in L.A. today, Jack?
I am. Just got back from New Orleans.
Oh, nice. New Orleans is. Oh, that's right. We'll talk about that in a minute. And live in our studio, but from London, so we'll take it that we're spanning the entire region from Vancouver Island all the way to London. Dina Begum, who's promoting her new book, Made in Bangladesh, and tomorrow doing a thing with the Museum of Food and Drink. Welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yeah. Well, so before I forget, because I will forget, normally right now we're going to go into like kind of what we did over the past week, but why don't you, for those who are listening live on Patreon, because, you know, it goes free on Friday, but for Patreon listeners who happen to be in New York, why don't you tell them what you're doing tomorrow with the museum?
So tomorrow I'll be at the Museum of Food and Drink chatting with Mayuk Sen. So we're having a conversation on flavors of Bangladeshi cuisine and just generally flavors. And it'll be a really fun event with snacks, Bangladeshi snacks, which unfortunately I haven't cooked, but it'll be fun.
So what's next?
So I think we're getting Bangladeshi samosas and some lassi. I think everyone's familiar with lassi, and hopefully some other snacks that Casey's organising at the museum. And there'll be a book signing and just kind of, you know, meeting people. So it'll be like a fun event from 6:30 onwards tomorrow.
And what's the name, because you give a recipe for it in your book, what's the name for the Bangladeshi samosa that you...
So Bangladeshi samosas are shingaras. So there's a recipe in the book, and it's literally handmade pastry with Nigella seeds in the pastry, and then it's a spicy potato mixture with Bengali 5 spice, which includes mustard, Nigella seeds, cumin, fennel, and fenugreek.
Yeah, well,
So, yeah.
You know, as I say, how many times have I said this, John, that fenugreek is a spice I wish I cooked with more. Every time I smell it, I'm like, oh, I love fenugreek, and then I don't cook with it. Isn't
So
that weird?
good. Yeah. You know what? It is one of those spices that you have to be kind of, you have particular dishes for it. We put it in a kind of a stew or a porridge called khichdi. There's also a recipe in there, but that one doesn't use it. But there's two versions, like a dry version, and then there's a kind of like a porridge version. And it's such a nice flavor when you put the seeds into the kind of the porridge.
And how close is that dish to the Maggie Thatcher style kedgeree English thing? Completely different?
Completely
like, not
different.
even related? I mean, it's related
No.
by name, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like stolen.
Khichdi
adapted.
or kedgeree,
Yeah.
but or khichdi in India. So you have regional variations, but definitely not close. And we don't put fish in it.
Oh,
It's
no
a
fish.
purely vegetarian dish. So
Okay.
with the rice and lentils and sometimes veggies.
Nice. All right. Well, so anyway, so this is the point. I mean, you've been on the road, so have you had any interesting culinary experiences over the past week?
Well, I just got in here actually yesterday, but then I've been kind of, I have had interesting experience since yesterday. Just I tried tacos at this taqueria, is that how you say it, in Jersey City, which was really nice. And I told my friends I hadn't tried tacos, like a good taco. You can't really get them in London, but now there may be, but it's a new thing. People are really into birria tacos and things. But that was really nice actually. So trying proper tacos.
And what style of taco was it?
It was beef, and I think it was a fried fish one, fish tacos.
Now, you're stepping into a little bit of a minefield because there's a bunch of people who hate on Mexican food on our side of the but anyway, it's the whole thing. But I'm glad you enjoyed the tacos.
It was good. See, I can't say I'm an expert. I don't know anything about it. I just went along with everybody. So.
Right, but like all of our LA team is like, tacos,
Well, I'm
East
going
Coast.
to LA next, so hopefully
Oh, there you go.
LA folk can let me know.
Well, so these guys can let you know where to go in LA to get some good tacos. What about you guys? What about the rest of Cooking Issues crew? What do you got for me in the week?
Yeah, like I said, just back from New Orleans, so
where'd you end up going?
Plenty to eat out there.
Where'd you end up going?
Oh my God, everywhere. We went for Jazz Fest, which we've never done before, and that was an interesting time and a good time. But otherwise, we did, Dookie Chase and Herb Saint and what's Donald Link's other place, Cochon.
I love
we had a
Cochon.
ton of gumbo.
Is Couchon still
Couchon's
good?
good.
It's still
Yeah.
good? Stays good? That's kind
Oh,
of like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's been solid for like 10, 12 years or however long it's been there. It's been pretty solid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they had this like crawfish empanada thing, like a fried crawfish pie, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have any of the...
Yeah, I have a question.
What?
Oh, I have a question for you about gumbo. How do you prefer your gumbo? Because we had so much gumbo this week, and my girlfriend likes it thinner. I like a more like thick roux, like with okra in it. You know,
I'm agnostic, but I do like okra. So
Okay.
I know some people like filet and okra, and some people are like filet, but like I like them all. But I'm agnostic as to the thickness. Like if it's thin and under flavored, that's a no. That's no, right? So if it's just thin, see, when you say thin, you make it sound like it tastes thin. Like, is it just a thinner, because they're very highly flavored, not as thick items, right? But thin is also a taste
that's right.
descriptor, you know what I'm saying?
not thin in taste, thin in consistency.
I'm
Yeah.
agnostic. I'm agnostic. I can have it. Any way you want it, that's
I
the
hear
way.
you.
By the way, speaking of which, how is that the freaking... I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to start talking about the new Fall Guy movie and how they made Nastasia's least favorite Journey song as their theme song instead of like the original Lee Majors Fall Guy song. Ridiculous, but I don't have time for that today because we got a lot to talk about. No time for it. What about you, Stas? Anything this week, cooking wise? I know I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I know there's more in the annals of Pauly Shore, so I won't talk about it. What?
Stop thinking about that.
Anything cooking wise?
No. Wait, maybe. I got to think about it.
All right. You think about it. I know my man John's got something cooking-wise because he's got about 50 kinds of mayonnaise sitting behind me. So what are all these mayonnaises? What's going on, mayonnaise man?
Now that my ovens are fixed at temperance, I am doing some R&D into the Belgian food menu I've been talking about for many months. And these are a bunch of mayos from Belgium that I just had shipped in last week. And going to see which one I like the best and figure out which one I'm going to try and reverse recipe test to make it from scratch at temperance. So
Why don't you just buy the freaking mayonnaise, dude?
because you can't buy this stuff in the U.S. and it's a lot of
Okay.
to ship. Yeah.
But are you going to make it like? Are you just going to buy Hellman's? You're going to bring out the best and then add the flavors to it to make it taste like the ones from Belgium.
I'm definitely considering that.
Yeah, listen, it's not bring out the Hellman's and bring out the whatever.
Yeah.
It's bring out the Hellman's and bring out the best.
Yeah.
The best.
That's true.
Yeah. Any mayonnaise in Bangladeshi cuisine?
Not really. We do have a lot of fast food. Last time I visited for the book research, it's the capital Dhaka, obviously, it has so many kind of different cuisines. So it's actually, until recently, it was hard to get proper Bangladeshi food because everyone was just like into the new kind of, fancy things. You've got sushi, kind of Bangladeshi inspired Chinese, Thai, all sorts of things. You can get burgers. I didn't try the burgers, but
That's probably a good call.
yeah, I think so. I did try it like once 20 years ago and I did not like it. It was nice, but it wasn't a burger. So I think you've got to try something that's, I don't know, it's local to where it is. That's how I feel anyway. But they do love mayo. But in Bangladeshi mayo, you probably have a side of really hot sauce or hot ketchup. So it's like hand in hand. But I think, yeah, good mayo is actually... Europe has really good mayos. When I went to Switzerland, there was a mayo. I can't remember the name of it, but I absolutely loved it. It was so creamy and different, And
Is it one of these?
I don't know. Like, let me see.
Like the main Belgian
Not that
brand.
one, but no, but like it looks the same color. It's more kind of yellowy rather than whitish, and it has, I think, more of a pronounced mustard flavor. I think that's
Okay.
what I remember.
Oh my God! So there's a guy named Hervé. You familiar with Hervé Tis?
No.
So he's kind of a bit of a crank, and he's kind of like there's like Hervé Tis and there's Harold McGee are kind of like a similar generation of people who are interested in science and cooking. But Hervé Tis is the crank, and Harold's a good one. Anyway, so like I've heard Hervé Tis on more than 12 occasions say, like, what do you put in a mayonnaise? And all of us are like, you put a little mustard. And he's like, no, then it's remoulade. It's remoulade. And you're like, Hervé, man, shut up. You know what I mean? Just shut up. Anyway, he's one of the few people I don't know, bad talking, whatever. He's still famous. Doesn't matter. I can say what I like. I can say what I like. Okay, so where were we even talking about? We went off on the mayonnaise behind us.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Mayonnaise, interestingly, very good hot weather food because once it's got so much oil in it and with the acid that it doesn't actually spoil. So going back to New Orleans, like the whole theory on old New Orleans sandwiches with the mayonnaise on is, how is it that everybody's not dying? They don't refrigerate their mayonnaise. The mayonnaise is on the counter. It turns out, like, after you leave it long enough, it's shelf stable and it's good. You know what I mean? You're not going to die. I mean, not that I recommend leaving your mayonnaise out forever, but you're not going to freaking die. Good hot weather condiment. You know what I mean, John?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, love
So
it.
if you're going to do the fries, because otherwise, why would you have the mayonnaise? If you're going to do the fries, have you been to Superiority and had his new fries yet?
No, not yet.
Well, you're a chump. If you're doing research, I mean, it's not like you have that far to go. It's like literally like a half-hour walk from the restaurant.
I was there on Sunday, too.
And you didn't get the fries?
Yeah, we just went for dessert. I went with my cousin.
Did your dunce cap fall off on the way over here?
No, well, isn't the fries only for brunch? I don't think they have it on the dinner menu yet.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so I definitely missed the brunch, but yeah.
All right.
It's funny you say dunce cap, because I had a question for Molecules about Confederacy of Dunces, if he found any good hot dog carts in New Orleans. Confederacy of Dunces.
I did not.
You did not.
Have you ever had a lucky dog?
Yes.
And was it any good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've said this on previous shows. I'm not the biggest hot dog enthusiast, so I'm an unreliable source.
Let me ask you this. When you had the lucky dog, how drunk were you?
Well, I was in New Orleans.
Yeah, because they're famously run by people who are drunk, serving to people who are drunk. Yeah, so it's like, I don't think anybody has had one sober or knows what they taste like sober. And so, like, who knows what the quality is, right? But that's the official Confederacy of Dunce's hot dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one more thing quickly. My favorite drunk food in New Orleans is a po' boy from Verde Mart. I don't know if anyone who's been there has had that, but it is.
Which one's that? What street's that on?
It's toward Frenchman, I guess. It looks just like a, trashy, like, bodega-style place, and you order at the counter and it takes forever, and there's, a bunch of questionable people outside. It's great.
And what is your style? Oyster? What is your McGilla?
Oyster, shrimp, mixed.
Now, let me ask you this. Are they actual Gulf shrimp, which are delicious, or were they bullcrap farm shrimp, which are trash, filth?
Again, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Can you one more time say the name of that place, Joe? Or, not Joe, sorry, Jack.
Oh.
Jeez.
Verde Mart.
Verde Mart.
VERTIMARTE. Yeah.
By the way, before I get hate, I don't buy good shrimp normally. I buy the same farm shrimp that we all buy. It's just if you can get saltwater wild shrimp, they are infinitely better. That's all I'm going to say. I don't, whatever. I also buy the regular shrimp, okay? I don't want to hear it.
A wild caught shrimp?
Yeah, it's just salt, like...
Hand caught wild shrimp? Individually?
If you this is why I was saying, this is why I think the shrimp clemenceau is so good at Dookie Chase, because they're not using like fresh water grown in a cement tank shrimp. They're like, when they're raised in salt water, they have higher free amino acid content. They taste better, but period. Like it's not like oh, maybe they taste better. There've been studies people know this. It's just that's why shrimp now are cheap. That's why shrimp is everybody food now, and not like the thing that your parents slap your hands away when you go to get one off the counter. Like when I was a kid. When I was a kid, you reach for the shrimp. You know what I mean? Those are adult shrimp. Anyway, whatever. But again, I eat the same ones we all eat because it's a different food. I just like to think of them as different foods. What about you, Quinn? You've been strangely silent on foods you've cooked over the last week.
Oh yeah, I've just been waiting for my opening. I've been a busy little bee.
All right. What do you got?
Let's see. I got 3 pounds of local elderflower. So I made a flavored salt, a flavored sugar, an extract. I'm fermenting some with ginger. And last night, I made oil and spindle.
How was the oil?
It was late. I actually haven't tasted it yet.
Come on, dude. Have someone bring you some right now. We got to know now.
It was like 10:30 at night.
But it's not 10:30 at night right now is what I'm trying to say. That's all I'm saying. It's oil. All you got to do is, have someone go over, boop, boop, boop. You taste, you let us know. And then if it sucks, don't let us know. And then we'll
I'll
forget
work
it by
on that.
next week. You know what I'm saying? Now listen, while someone's bringing you some of that, I hope, sell me on flavored salt because I'm not sold. I'm just not sold on flavored salt. The only salt in my mind that's flavored that's not like 50-50 salt with something else, you know what I mean, is like some smoked salts are smoked enough that I can actually taste it once I've used it. But most flavored salts, by the time I put it on, I can't taste it anymore. So sell me on flour flavored salt.
Well, I mean, it's an experiment, so I have it vacuum packed with the salt right now. I'm basically going to sort of drain whatever liquid there is, sort of rinse it lightly, and then I'm going to try to recrystallize the brine, essentially.
I guess that's true. Let me backpedal a little bit. There are also salts that I think are okay, but they're not really salts. They're just dehydrated liquids that are salty. Like soy sauce crystals. That's not soy salt in my mind. That's just like dehydrated soy sauce. That is different flavored from salt. Anyway, let us know. But I'm just saying, I'm what's it called? I'm skeptical. How much did those flowers set you back?
They were actually pretty. I mean, I think they were reasonable. It was $16 a pound.
And how big is a pound? And like, how light are those flowers?
I mean, it's a pretty large volume. There was like 3-gallon Ziplocs, I think. roughly.
And I know liquor is infinitely expensive, but did you say you did a grain neutral or not?
Yeah, I did. Basically roughly 200 mils of Everclear, basically.
Right. I mean, that's,
and then I just did a
that
old
and
school
syrup is
overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That and syrup, those are what God wants you to do with it. In my opinion. My pen just ran out. Okay. What did I do? So you know how I talk about how I love those those cheese and prosciutto stuffed peppers in oil that, like, I don't think they're necessarily high quality, but I love them.
Yeah.
But the jars are really expensive. They're like $10 a jar. I went to DiPaolo's, which is my favorite place to buy things of that nature. And for weeks I've been like, can I get the whole bag? Because I don't want, because it comes in like a gallon bag. And they're like, you want the whole bag? And I'm like, yeah. I don't, first of all, like, the more of those glass jars I bring into my house, the more my house is filled with those glass jars. I already have mustard jars, like, coming out my ears. We give them away as gifts. That's, like, how much, And secondly, like, it's $8 and I'm paying for all this glass. So for $53, I got a gallon bag. And everyone thought I was crazy. My wife thinks I'm crazy. I'm going to see how long. I'm already a quarter of the way through it, and I bought them on Saturday. So we'll see how fast I can go through $53 a gallon of these peppers, because whatever. That's is that the only thing that I've done this week? Cooking wise? Oh, I got one more for you. You guys know how I mill flour, make bread all the time, blah 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 blah. So normally my normal thing is sesame on top, because I love sesame. Sesame is delicious, right? But my nieces, they don't like sesame crust, which I still don't get, but whatever, Oh, speaking of which, let me backpedal a little bit. So I asked permission to say this. So one of my nieces, Ellery, right, is like super. She's a great hater, right? She's a super good hater. So you know how everyone says, I don't know, do they say this in England? Don't yuck my yum. Is this a familiar phrase to you?
Now it is, I think, because social media, but not until recently.
Yeah. So, like, it's not considered polite, right, to be like, ew, you eat that bad.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's considered to be a jerk move. Well, Ellery, as a world-class hater, right, says the opposite. So she's like, hey, don't yum my yuck. So if she hates something, she doesn't want to hear you say how good it is. It, like, offends her taste buds. I'm like, huh. That's an interesting turnaround. So she doesn't like sesame crust. So I did Dutch Crunch. And I haven't done Dutch Crunch in a million years. I busted out my mom's old Sunset bread cookbook from 1977, got the Dutch Crunch recipe. So for those of you that don't know Dutch Crunch, it I don't know. I mean, I haven't lived in that part of California since I was 3. But, it's a coating that you put on bread and rolls where you mix an unconscionable amount of yeast, rice flour, sugar, and oil, a little oil. and water into a paste, and you let it rise and get hyper foamy, and then you paint it on the bread after the form and before the last rise, and it itself rises again on top of the bread, and you put it in it. It makes these kind of dark brown, crunchy, like striations in it. So success. That was my cooking success of the week.
Nice.
Right? Yeah, there you go. All right. Am I missing anything? Oh, well, let's taste the mayonnaise is at the end on the 2 minute
If we
mark.
got
We're
time,
gonna
yeah.
at the 2 minute mark. We're gonna go. Dina, you're going on a mayonnaise tasting with us. We're going to go mayonnaise ape
Okay.
crap. So when there's 2 minutes left, you're going to hear the music come on, and then no matter what we're talking about, mayonnaise is gonna come out. All right.
Okay.
So, by the way, your new book, Made in Bangladesh, and it's coming out or it's out now?
It's out. So it came out in November. So
Right.
like US, UK, and and Australia, but it's available worldwide.
Right. But where I want you to buy it is Kitchen Arts and Letters, where you can get a discount. What's our discount at Kitchen Arts and Letters for Patreon?
20%.
20% at Kitchen Arts and Letters. Buy it there instead of on Amazon, but you have to be a Patreon member. You want to tell them how to become a Patreon member and what they get?
Patreon.com/cooking issues. There's a couple different membership levels. You get perks at every level of membership. Some levels you can watch us live. Others all levels you get discounts to a lot of the great people we work with. Prioritize questions getting answered. Just a whole bunch of things. Access to our Discord. So yeah, check it out. Patreon.com/cooking issues.
Yeah, and speaking of, we have a lot of questions, but like a lot of them are like not related to what we're going to be talking about today. When's our next No Tangent Tuesday?
2 weeks, I think.
Who do we have next week? AJ Schaller. AJ Schaller's on next week from Mush, the mushroom growing person. She's going to be good. She's also was at Cuisine Solutions, so she loves a good technical cooking question. So maybe we can rip through some of these technical cooking questions next week. So Quinn, look for any that are in our list right now that need to be answered now because somebody has some sort of party or something that they absolutely positively need to know some piece of technical cooking information for, and otherwise we'll hold those for next week. What?
Yeah, I don't think so. Also, the oil's really good.
Oh yeah, yeah. So like how? So if you remember, a couple weeks back, we had Kevin from Noma Projects on, and so when they were going to do a vinaigrette for flours, they did a flour vinegar and then added the vinegar to the oil instead of the oil. So you're getting mainly the hydrophobic stuff off of the almost like fat washing, like an enfleurage off of the flour. It's probably a different aromatic profile to a water base. Did you do any straight? I guess your syrup is a straight water base.
I didn't do a syrup yet. I just did straight sugar, and I'm going to let it leach out over a few days.
And then what are you going to call that stuff that comes out? Syrup.
I'm gonna
Cordial.
Like, try and, yeah.
Cordial, yeah.
Actually, cordial.
I was looking at your cordial recipes, and they're cooked, which is nice. So they're stable, which I thought was
Absolutely.
yeah. And what are we going to get? All right. All right. So onto the book. So this is actually your second book. Your first book was about which you know what? The last time I've never been to Brick Lane.
Yeah.
And I've been to East London, and the only thing I know about it is I was making drinks there at a drink place. But then also, I was thankful that the eel shops had closed because it's gross. They're bad.
Do you know what? I'm not a fan, I'll be honest.
Yeah, you know why?
I've never tried them.
Because you never tried them.
I've never tried them.
Don't bother. There are very, 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 very few foods I've had in my life where I'm like, nope. And I don't think it's just the one I had. I just think this is not a good product.
I think it's an acquired taste, definitely. I think if you've grown up around it or someone's kind of initiated you into it from a young age, then you'll probably like it. But I think anyone who's kind of not familiar with it, you go into it, you wouldn't. I mean, I personally don't. I mean, British people will think, oh my God, how can you say this? This is our traditional food. But I feel like it doesn't look as appetizing. You know, sometimes I feel like you eat it with our eyes. You know, you look at something and then for me anyway, I just feel like it doesn't appeal to me. And I haven't tried it. I don't think I will try it.
It's got all of the bad. In other words, like it's any negative aspect of any person's cuisine to somebody else. It has, right. So like there are aspects of it that are liked by all cuisines, but there's something in it for everyone to hate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the ones I had, it was served cold.
No.
It was snotty. Right, so there are people who like all of those things, right? It had like bones in it, right? So that's another thing. Some people like it, some people don't, and it was horribly underseasoned and not salted. So there is no cuisine I know of where one of those things doesn't offend them, right? There's no cuisine I know of that wouldn't be like, oh, that's gross. But I know that plenty of places, if you just seasoned it, would be like, okay. You know what I mean?
Warmed it up a bit or something.
Yeah. Or like made it not snotty or took the bones out. There's not one person I've ever met who likes all of those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, do you want to talk a little bit about Brick Lane before we get into the new book?
So Brick Lane was the first book I wrote, and that came out about 5 years ago. And the book was based on the immigrant community of Brick Lane, and there's a lot of Bangladeshi people. Well, there used to be, but it's also got it's an immigrant kind of gateway where a lot of people come from different countries or have over the years. You've got like a strong like Jewish history there, French Huguenot history, a lot of now Somali, Eastern European as well, and as well as a lot of Chinese cuisine, which has been quite new addition to it. But it's kind of where my dad used to work off Brick Lane. He used to be a tailor, working in the leather factories. So I used to go with him every Sunday and kind of just the food markets. Everything was just so much more vibrant, as it is when you're younger and you're just experiencing things before social media and everything else took over. So I think I just loved meeting the different communities. So that book was about kind of celebrating not just the Bangladeshi heritage, but also the other communities that I saw growing up. So I shared a lot of recipes from different kind of vendors and traders, and it's just like celebrating the diversity of the area. And again, it kind of was a little bit of an introduction to Bangladeshi cuisine for people who weren't familiar. So there's a lot of kind of Western Bangladeshi cuisine, like a lot of fusion. I hate that word fusion, but like a lot of blended recipes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's lost a little bit of its sting, right? As like people, it had a really, really bad connotation for a long time, but do you think it's losing its sting?
I think so. Now I think it is a bit more kind of, I can say it now. So before I'm like, no way, it's not fusion.
I don't think that the implication anymore is like uncultured white guy stealing two different things and putting them together.
No,
I don't think that's what it is
No, it
anymore.
isn't. Because like, look, when I was talking about Bangladeshi cuisine, there's Bangladeshi Chinese, for instance, or Thai, or Japanese. It's like, it's a cuisine in its own right, because you're just blending together, like familiar techniques with different flavors, or different familiar flavors, different techniques. And I do love that when you kind of showcase both of those kind of parts of different cuisines, rather than trying to just do a mishmash of things without thinking.
Right.
If thought goes into it and you kind of care about it and the food tastes good afterwards, there's no reason why it can't be good. So I mean, it's not a problem anymore. And I think there's a lot of things I just love, which are a blend of cultures and flavors or textures. I love putting kind of spices into my kind of baked goods. I love baking, so like spices into cakes and biscuits or cookies, as you guys call them, preserves, things like that, chutneys. I used to kind of actually make chutneys and jams around the time Brick Lane came out. So I'd have a stall with Asian influenced or Bengali influenced kind of chutneys and jams, which I used to kind of sell and stock in local stores. And I love kind of preserving. So that book is also, and preserving is a kind of a big element of Bangladeshi cuisine. So after that, I kind of wanted to kind of go back to my roots, as it were, and just kind of promote the traditional kind of cuisines that my grandma taught me, my mum taught me, things that are kind of in danger of being kind of lost because people aren't cooking that way anymore, or using those techniques, familiar techniques and flavors, because of being busy, not having the time, or not knowing really, not having anyone teach them.
So a couple things on preserves in the book. First of all, what is an ash gourd?
Ash gourd is a winter melon.
Okay, winter melon. Okay.
Yeah, so it's, I think in the US you probably call it winter melon more than ash gourd.
I've never heard. Yeah.
So
and that one's preserved. The one at the back of the book.
So back it says it's a really famous kind of Sylheti dish, which Sylhet is the region I'm from in Bangladesh, and it's like the northeast of Bangladesh, and it's kind of like how you do poached pears, but it's more kind of syrupy, and it's got, the kind of triumvirate of Bangladeshi dessert spicing, I think, which is bay, cinnamon, and cardamom. So those three really pair well together. And
you said it's a different bay from the bay I get here.
So yeah, it's like you've got like two types. You've got the one with the central kind of one vein, and then you've got the three ones, which is the kind of, I think the three one is that the British one? I'm getting confused now. But the Indian one or South Asian one is more kind of earthy, I think, and then the British one, actually we use a lot of the British one because we grow them at home and in the garden, but that's got more of a citrusy note. So I say, like using the British one I prefer over the South Asian one because it's just a bit more kind of fruity in flavor. So any kind of like bay, if you have the stronger version, I'd say put less. But if you have the more citrusy, fruity one, then put like a couple of bay leaves in there. But it's just such a nice kind of, normally you don't associate bay leaves with desserts, not very often anyway. But in Bangladeshi cuisine, a lot of desserts, puddings, rice puddings and creamy desserts have bay leaf in them. And so that's like a preserved ash gourd. And it's, I've got a recipe for sticky rice as well as coconut morabba, which is again a preserve. And if you have to eat it with sticky rice, the coconut preserve, the ash gourd preserve, and some cream, like heavy cream, and it's just like the most delicious meal.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The sticky rice you have in here was it a red sticky rice?
Yes, so the red rice is quite popular in Sylhet region. It is available everywhere else as well, and that's got more of, I feel, like a nutty flavour to it. You can use white sticky rice as well, but that's got more of a flavour, I think earthy and more nutty. I think a bit more savoury than the plain one.
But is it the same as the aromatic sticky rice from West Bengal? What's the name of it? I wrote it down.
Binnichal?
Gobindabog.
Gobindabog. No, Gobindabog is actually, it's not so sticky. That's more kind of, I guess it's a smaller grained rice, like basmati, but it's very fragrant, but it's a small grain rice. So, but it's not sticky per se. It's probably more starchy. But then in Bangladeshi cuisine, we've got chinigura rice or kalojira rice, which is also popular in West Bengal, which are very small grains. They almost look like cumin seeds, just a bit bigger than cumin seeds. And really, really amazing in biryanis and puddings as well, because it's got more of an aroma. And I think there's a bit more of a resurgence in kind of using these local rices, which are kind of, again, with kind of, I guess, industrialization, people are losing kind of all the kind of expertise they had in growing these kind of traditional rice kind of varieties and vegetables and all sorts of things. And I think there is a bit more of a drive now to kind of preserve those things. So one of the reasons I did kind of touch upon, obviously there's a lot more, like the book is kind of providing like an overview of everything. But there's so many varieties of rice popular in Bangladesh, local rices, and sticky rice, the red sticky rice as well as regular, the chinigura, which I use in my kachi biryani recipe. That's like so much more unique than using like traditional basmati. Basmati is great, but then sometimes I think for different things, using different rices, like it just brings out, I don't know, it's just different texture, because the kachi biryani is made with mutton. So it's like fattier, tougher, and you slow cook the mutton. You cook the mutton raw with the rice, so which is kachi, which means raw.
Now, in Bangladesh, how old of a lamb are they using? And then in England, because here it's impossible. You can only get lamb here.
Yeah.
Like you can't get mutton here at all. But in England, I'm guessing you could probably still get mutton.
Yeah, mutton's quite popular in England. So it is. I mean, I think even in British cuisine, a lot of people do still eat mutton. So you have like mutton roasts and things, or stews. And in kind of Asian shops, you always have mutton. I mean, lamb is commonly eaten, but I think for like slow cooking or things like biryanis, where you can kind of marinate the meat overnight, then it just brings, it's got a different, it's like more gamey, you've got a
but
better
I've never
flavor.
had it.
You've never had it?
No, because so you go to Keen's, right, which is a famous steakhouse here, right? It's like, our Hawksmoor or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, whatever, we have a bunch of famous steakhouses. But Keen's is famous for their mutton chops, and they bring you like a double saddle out. And I was like so excited. It was the first place I went after the pandemic, and they brought it out. I was like, this is good, but it's basically lamb. You know what I mean? I was like itching to have like this, like, I want mutton. And then I was like, nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know what? I think mutton tastes better when it's stewed or in a curry or some sort of like rich dish like a biryani, personally, because, mutton chops plain, because if you have a nice piece of lamb or lamb chops, it's just amazing. Or you can have lamb in other dishes. It doesn't have to have a lot of huge amount of flavor added to it, because the lamb itself is nice and it is more tender. Whereas, mutton, you can make it tender, but I think because of the flavour, it needs something more. It needs to be cooked, low and slow sometimes for those flavours to come out. I get where you're coming from, because I'm not a fan of mutton that's quite plainly cooked.
Because what's the point? Just get lamb.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, lamb's good, but I want something else.
Yeah.
Before I forget, because I didn't write it down, but you made me remember. So you give a recipe here for, I believe it was lemon, oil pickled lemon. Mm-hmm. And I buy oil pickles all the time, but I've never made them. And I've always wondered, what is the oil actually doing in a pickle? Like, what's it actually there for?
So the lebu achar, which is the lemon pickle with some chilies in it, it's a traditional way. It preserves it basically because when you make the pickle, in the picture you can probably see there's like a whole like layer of oil on top of the pickle itself. So you've got to make sure it's submerged in oil, and that's a kind of preserving technique. And back in the day, even now, people don't have refrigeration in a lot of places in Bangladesh, and just generally it's a traditional way my grandma used to make, pickles, and it adds a lot of flavor into because the thing is, you eat these pickles, they're very rich, obviously, but they're in oil. So you'd have them with something plain. And in Bangladeshi cuisine, we don't have a lot of, our day-to-day staple is plain rice. So it's not like stir-fried or a biryani or a pulao or something. So it's a plain rice. And so you add other elements to give that richness. So you can have a little bit of the lemon pickle on the side with something. And general Bangladeshi cooking is very light, day to day, which you wouldn't know unless you ate at somebody's house, because, it's not, that's one of the reasons why I bought this book out, because people aren't familiar with the home cooking or traditional cooking. So the lemon actually, or you can, even use the lemon oil in kind of, if you make a rice dish or a stir-fried dish. And sometimes, that has a lot of flavor itself because it's kind of cooked down briefly with the oil. So you don't just add the oil like, I guess like a brine or something. So, but you cook it for a little bit of simmer it with the lemon, which have to be preserved for about 4 or 5 days. So you kind of semi-cook them down and kind of in the sun when we do have sun in the UK, which is not very often. Yeah. And then, it's like, so you've got to like preserve lemon to begin with. And then you take that preserved lemon and then you kind of cook it gently, briefly, simmer it in oil and all the kind of mustard seeds and other kind of elements, I think it's garlic in there as well and chilies. So all of that kind of, you have to let it kind of marinate, I guess, for, ideally a couple of weeks before you enjoy it. But it just has, like you have chili oil. The oil is just really nice on its own. It's similarly with, I think, pickles made with oils, that you have that kind of flavored oil that goes with really, like simple thing. Like, again, you can have it with khichdi, which is what I suggest having it with, which is the rice and lentil dish. So it just perks up, other simple things, or plain rice with, like some vegetables or chicken on the side or something.
Nice. And the other thing I want to say before I forget is, Joe, what camera should I put this up to? Where?
Down.
Down.
There you go.
Boom. This book is gorgeous.
Thank you.
This super, super pretty, like, what was it? Which camera? Here you go. Here, John, take a look at this. This is like, so like, I get cookbooks at my house, and this, when you look at it, you're like, oh, I want to eat some of that. You know what I mean? It's like, and my wife was like, oh, this looks good.
That's good.
You know what I mean? It's like super pretty, like hyper punchy colors. Like there's one page, I forget what it is, but there's like a faint pink cast by the spine. And like you open the book and it's like, and my house is too dark. As I got older, I can't see very well at night, so I have a headlamp when I'm reading. So it's like, is my lamp pink? And because there's like just a light pink glow coming out of the spine of the book. I was like, oh, it's so pretty.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
There's a bit of color in each chapter. It's kind of got that kind of main color theme. And then I love color. I'm wearing black today, but I generally love
New York.
color.
Going New York on me. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I just wanted it to be vibrant and colorful, just to show the vibrancy of Bangladeshi food. So it kind of, when you look at the dish, it's not just the dish there, but the whole culture of Bangladesh. And it's a land, as you've looked through the book, of many festivals. So food is...
Would you say 13 festivals in 12 months?
13 festivals in 12 months is a saying, because there's so many festivals for everything, literally. You have, the rain festival, summer festival, spring festival, and these are like big events done nationally and even internationally in the kind of the diaspora. People celebrate these things, and anything's a good, any kind of occasion to celebrate with food, especially sweet foods. And it's like a joyous cuisine and culture and a lot of tradition, and I think food is a great, it's contribute to kind of getting to know like a country, people, and it's just a great pathway into knowing something that you're not familiar with. And I think it wasn't just the food that I wanted to kind of showcase, but people and all the traditions and all the kind of elements that kind of create Bangladesh. Normally you see all the kind of negativity, you see the flooding and all the kind of disasters, and obviously those things happen, but there's a lot of joy that, I wanted people to see as well and experience, through the food.
So festivals, you mentioned there's like a season for weddings, and then you mentioned, I had to ask you about it, the fish wedding.
Oh, yeah. The fish wedding. See, like everything, we love fish. Fish and rice, make a Bengali is a saying. So if you don't eat those two, you're not really true a Bengali person or Bangladeshi person. During weddings, fish is a huge thing. So you have fish-shaped pastries, sweetmeats, and you have like a pair of fish, usually roe, which is a carp, and you dress them up as a bride and groom and present them on a tray. And so it's like, and it's paraded around to everyone to see, and they actually look like, a married couple, got the red outfit, which was a traditional Bangladeshi wedding clothes for the lady fish, and then you've got like a white Punjabi or a tunic for the guy, and then sadly they have, a sad ending where people have to like chop them up and eat them afterwards to celebrate.
We all have a sad ending, Dina. We all have.
That is true.
But I totally want now to see like a fish. I forgot. I'm stupid. I wanted to Google it. I'm going to Google. I got to see pictures of this.
Yeah, you got to see it. Yeah, I wish I could have included a picture. I just didn't get around to it. But hopefully, people will look it up. And also, cutting a fish like after a wedding, fish is symbolic for so many things, like prosperity, good health, and So the day after the wedding, traditionally in some regions, not all regions, and before the Bangladeshis come at me and say, "Oh, we don't do this," Right. But the bride traditionally, the husband would go and buy, or back in the day, fish, the biggest fish he could find or get hold of, and then the bride would cut the fish, and then the family would gather together and cook and eat it. So that was kind of symbolic of welcoming a bride into her home. I'm sure it can work both ways, men can do it too, but
But didn't you say they only made her make one cut? They didn't make her work too hard on that day?
Yeah. So like literally, like you just hold the fish, and because most of the time women would be dressed in their kind of the day after the wedding in their kind of wedding finery, in a sari or something, and so you wouldn't want like a fish driven on your outfits. And I've known a bride to be like, no, I'm not going to do it. It's going to mess up my clothes. So, but yeah, it's just literally sometimes people just hold a fish, or nowadays people make like a fish-shaped cake, so they don't have to actually cut the fish, which can defeat the...
Yeah, I don't know, like, to me, I don't know, it's not my culture, but I want the real fish.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a fun thing,
Yeah. So I wasn't expecting to go on fish early because I had a bunch of other stuff to ask. But since we're on fish, you want to stay on fish for a while?
Sure.
Okay. So the fermented fish, obviously, you say it's a huge category. By the way, when I mutilate pronunciations, please just immediately correct me because, fermented fish in general, shutki? Shutki, yeah. But then the one that you mentioned that you say substitute anchovies. How do you pronounce shidal?
Shidal. So shidal is the actual fermented one. Other one, shutki is the term for fermented and dried fish.
Right.
But shidal is the actual fermented fish, which is fermented underground in like earthenware pots and things.
So can you buy that at a normal market?
You can probably get it in specialist Bangladeshi stores if they can import it, but I've only seen it in a couple of stores in London, so I'm not sure about the US. But you can substitute that. With the dried fish, anchovies is a good substitute, but for the shidal, the fermented, I would say, like Thai fish paste is a balachang, or there's a Thai fish paste that's very strong and pungent. It's like looks grey almost in a little tub, so that's a good substitute for that.
Do you say you think it's closer to that or closer to like West African like gedge?
I'm not familiar with gedge, but
how big is the fish?
The fish are small, and by the time it ferments, it actually turns into a bit of a mush. So you have like semi-disintegrated small fish, like small sardines, I would say, and then usually they're made with small fish, and then you don't actually eat the whole fish. You put it in a broth, and you kind of cook it in a broth, and then you kind of strain it out, so you get the flavor.
I saw that. It was interesting. It's like a strain and discard. That's like it's interesting. Yeah. So now that's some FOMO. I don't have that. And then the other one that I've never had is the Bombay duck, the dried fish, which you have a recipe for with, I think, aubergine?
With aubergine, yes.
Yeah. And I've only ever had that fish fresh.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Which is weird. So it's a lizard fish, harpodon, right? But have you ever cooked it fresh?
No, I haven't cooked it fresh. I think it's Bombay duck is, I'd say, an easy way to try the dried fish that's popular in Bangladesh, because it's fairly easy to get hold of. If you go to Chinatown or, like a Thai place, you can get it. But the other varieties that my mum would get from Bangladesh, for instance, isn't readily available here. So I haven't tried it fresh, but, you've got... I think in India they do pakoras out of it, I think, or, like... Bombay duck fry.
Yeah, I've never had it that way. But when it's fresh, it's...
How does it taste when it's fresh?
It's like Jell-O.
Really?
It's like because it's super
I
cartilaginous.
guess it is a bit gelatinous, yeah.
So what I was wondering is, it's like, and so like I used to love to make it like whole fried because the bones, such as they are, get real soft because it's and you eat the whole thing, and it's just like it just explodes in your mouth. Like it's crunchy on the outside, it explodes in your mouth. But when it gets cold, I hate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it's fresh. But I was wondering if the texture maybe firms up a little bit once it's reconstituted after it's dried.
It does, because I think it's because I don't like, it's kind of like that eel, isn't it? So you don't like that gelatinous, gelatinous is not so bad, but sometimes it can not be.
Yeah.
Yes,
when it's cold. When it's cold.
Yeah, exactly, when it's cold. So I think when it's dried out, you don't really get that. It tastes more kind of meaty. And when you cook it the way you cook it in the recipe I've got for it, you're kind of essentially like stir frying it. And so any kind of gelatinousness left is just fried out, and then it's kind of a dry, kind of spicy dish. So, like sambal, you would have like beginning of the sambal, it's quite dry, a bit like that. So you don't really taste that. But there are like for shutki, I mean, I would say if you do have Bangladeshi grocery stores and if you can source it, try and get
Queens. It's got to be Queens, right? Yeah,
exactly. So try and get bora mach shutki, which is big fish shutki. So bora mach is big fish in Bengali. So it's chunkier and flaky, kind of like almost like cod, but more flavorful. And that's just really amazing. And you could use that in this aubergine dish if you can find that. If not, Bombay duck is a good kind of thing to use as well.
Nice. Okay, now more on fish. Talk to me, because, so again, you stepped into a little bit of a personal minefield here.
Okay.
Hilsa / Ilish, right?
Yeah.
You say it's like the fish.
Yes.
Right? It's like the fish, right?
Yes.
Turns out very closely related to shad, American
Really?
shad.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I think my dad would know that. My dad is to be obviously obsessed with fish.
Well, yeah, you talk about
Yeah.
him fishing several times, and
Yeah.
you have a picture of him, with a giant gourd. Now, what does everyone get a place they can grow vegetables in England? Is this something everybody gets?
My dad had an allotment, which is like, I guess, is it a community garden here? I think maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like a shared, kind of garden. So you've got to apply for it in your kind of borough or neighborhood, and then there's only allocated spaces. So when we moved we didn't have a garden growing up. We still live in a flat, and then when we moved to this new space, there wasn't much of a Bangladeshi community then, which is like 20 years ago. And then Dad wasn't the first ones, to go there and start growing Bangladeshi vegetables, and which is a way to kind of recreate those traditional dishes. And even though you could get those vegetables in the shops, but they weren't fresh and nothing like obviously freshly grown vegetables, and pesticide free and all the rest of it. And so he now is like there's loads of Bangladeshi people growing. I've seen like a huge kind of rise in that. So for the last maybe 10-15 years, so everyone's growing stuff everywhere. And but you have to apply for a space, and when you do get a space, you see like endless. You just know it's a Bangladeshi plot because you've got like these kind of I guess canopies, with gourds. You've got these kind of I'm so bad at explaining things, but like crisscross kind of thing, fencing.
Like a trellis.
Trellis, that's it. Trellis with monchtu, Bangladeshi monchtu. It's not. It's a different variety. We call it shim. And
I had to look that up. That's like a snap pea.
hyacinth bean kind of. Yeah,
Right.
hyacinth bean is I think the correct thing. Or you can or call it Bangladeshi monchtu. But hyacinth bean I think is most accurate. And so they're like flatter and wider. And then they've got like two varieties, more of a green version, and then there's one purplish version. So the two that my dad used to grow anyway. And those are it's just great to grow these things. And the gourd picture you saw, that was probably not even the biggest. He's grown a gourd that's taller than I am.
It's a long gourd.
Yeah, it's like almost 6 foot.
What is it with the British Isles and people growing long vegetables?
People are in England, they are obsessed. My dad's, all his allotment friends, everyone was, having a competition every summer when it's harvest time. Who's grown the biggest pumpkin or, gourd.
You look up all like the world record for like biggest vegetables, and it's all somebody in the UK somewhere.
Exactly.
And it's like dogs. The people look like they're vegetables.
We love showing off our vegetables, and everyone's posing in a picture.
Look up world's biggest potato, and there's a dude from England, and I challenge you, which one's the potato and which one's the guy? They look the same to me. You know what I mean? Very similar. Very similar. Who used to have that community garden? Nastasia had one in New York. Do you still have that? Did you somehow still own that, or did you have to give it up when you...
No. How would I take care of that?
I don't know, but you could like... This is the kind of thing that if anyone on earth could do it, Nastasia, you would somehow trade to have someone take care of it while you were gone in exchange for
I
like...
don't even have a place in New York.
I know, but
no,
like
no.
it just seems like the kind of thing that you would continue to finagle. You know what I mean? It just seems like you're.
No. It was too much community and not much garden.
Oh yeah, Stasia, this is why I think we actually like work well together, is because we both hate community so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, but back to shad. So, the hilsa is incredibly bony, but in Bangladesh, you don't take the bones out; you just deal with it, right? But you're eating with your hands, so you don't have to worry about it as much, right?
And yeah, so you eat with the hands, and you get the knack of it after a while. Obviously, I've eaten since I was very young, and it's one of my favorite fish, and it's the boneless one, which is the most famous fish and my favorite anyway. But you do have larger bones which you take out, but once you start getting used to it, and you have to kind of eat with your hand, I think, in order to kind of navigate the bones. So if you take the central bone out, then the other ones you can just kind of chew through them, I guess. And if it depends on how the fish is cooked as well. Sometimes it's kind of fried before kind of cooking in a stew or something, or a curry. So if it's fried, then I think you get the crisp bits of fish on the outside as well as the bones. And the bones are very thin generally, so you can navigate.
Those tertiary bones, those weird Y bones.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't really, it's a weird way like to describe it. I mean, I've never, touch wood, had a bone stuck in my hilsa bone. And every time I eat it, my mum's like, are you sure? Because I don't really like many kind of Bangladeshi fish, apart from hilsa is one of my favorites, probably like 2 or 3.
Shad is like one of my top favorite fish. I love it.
And it's the flavor. You can't beat it. It's like unrivaled.
Yeah, it's great.
I've never tried shad, but I'm going to try and
shad is great because it's both oily and mild.
Yeah,
that's
nice. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It wiststands cooking. I love it. It's
like
I love
mackerel.
shad.
Do you think it's?
They're all related to herring and all this, but like when I looked it up, the Bangladeshi one is like, and it's the same. It looks similar, and it swims upriver. It lives in the salt water and swims upriver and gets caught. Right. But here's the interesting thing from my point of view is that there's not a culture in America of selling it. Really?
Yeah.
But if there is in Bangladesh, can I get it frozen in a Bangladesh grocery store? And are they good frozen?
Yes, they are actually, because back in the day, I sound such a grandma now, back in the day, but yeah, you wouldn't be able to get as fresh fish. Now, to be honest, a lot of the times, I mean, when I was, we're doing the food for the book, the food stylist was saying she couldn't just tell the difference when she defrosted it, and they freeze it kind of instant, kind of fresh, like a frozen as it's called. So when you defrost it, it's almost like fresh. So a lot of the times, actually all the time, I don't think I've ever had it like. We wouldn't have it here, so it's frozen, always been frozen. But always, even the frozen ones, you got to try and get like a whole one if you can, rather than the pre-cut one, which the quality is quite low, not as good. So try and get like a newly kind of arrived fresh whole fish, and get the fishmonger to kind of slice it for you while it's frozen, and into kind of fairly, like maybe an inch.
Well, yeah, this is another thing that I've never seen before in my life. John, this will interest you, I think. The person I had to look it up, obviously, so I watched some YouTube videos, and they cut it into steaks whole ungutted.
Yeah, and you have the egg as well. Sometimes the hilsa egg is just so nice,
Right, right. But I was like, I've never seen this before in my life. And then they just push out the parts they don't want from the thing, and then leave the egg and leave it. But like, they steak it without gutting it first.
And then you kind of work on the outside, and if you have to kind of descale it a little bit. So yeah, it's kind of
amazing.
Like that.
All right, so listen, I'm totally gonna run out of stuff. Time, I mean. Tell me about these, what I would consider like kebabs done the opposite way. So you take the patties, the meat patties, you get this, John, you put them in breadcrumbs, then egg, then fry. Not egg, then breadcrumb, then fry.
No.
Breadcrumb, then egg, then fry. So what's the texture on the outside of that look like?
It's a jali kebab. So jali is like lace. It's like a lace effect. So when you have the breadcrumbs to kind of coat it, and then you dip it in the kind of egg and put it into the oil, it creates this kind of like almost like a lace effect, which is why it's called jali kebab. And it's almost like like you get the crisp bits from a fried egg on the outside. It's like that you have all over the kebab. So it's really nice, texturally, and it's really good with biryani. So if you have it on the side, you can have it on its own, but mashed into your biryani. If you make the mutton biryani, that's just amazing. And I'm not a fan of, I think some foods, I mean, anyone who knows me knows this, I don't use condiments on everything. A lot of the times you'll have an item and everyone's like, where's the sauce? Where's the dipping sauce? A lot of the times, I think this is one of those dishes where you have to try and have it on its own. And I think a lot of savory dishes or fried things, you don't need a sauce, really. You can have a dipping sauce, but it just takes away from the flavor sometimes rather than adding, because a lot of the dishes themselves are quite rich anyway, so you don't need to kind of add a ketchup or a mayo or like a chili sauce. But yeah, that's great with just like, rice or on its own without any condiments. I would say try it like that way.
And here's a random question that's a huge can of worms. Again, I'm going to mispronounce it. Pantabat?
Pantabat.
Okay, so cooked rice, add water, let it, quote unquote, ferment overnight. So a lot of people are going to freak out on safety. But of course, there's many fermented rice batters like idli, things like this. You know what I mean? The one you have here, my concern is that my kitchen is not hot enough to adequately ferment it to make it taste fermented. And I'm sure you had to bend in your book to people with food safety stuff. So you have it in the fridge overnight. But it's got to taste different when you actually ferment it out and have it like, at 30 Celsius or whatever it should be at.
So in obviously Bangladesh is very hot, and it used to be a way to kind of prevent spoilage. So people are worried about safety, but it used to be a safe way to preserve the food back in the day when there wasn't a fridge. Even now people have it, in the villages. So I would say like warm, to be on the safe side, I would recommend warm weather, warm temperature rather than hot temperature. So if it's a really hot day, don't leave it out in case you're worried about food safety. So warm day, and it shouldn't have overly fermented. Like sometimes you have idli, it's like you can taste the fermentation. Yeah. So for pantabat, it shouldn't taste overly fermented. It just has a slight funkiness, which you shouldn't be able to taste so much, but it's just adds something, to it. But it's not as strong. So
and you drain it and you eat it in the morning.
Yeah, you
with
drain
like chili
it.
And
you drain it, but not completely. You can have a little bit of water left in it, so like mostly drain it, but it should be kind of what's the word, watery, I guess. And then you have it, you can have it by itself with chilies, onions, or you can have it with bortas, which are the mashes, and it's a staple of obviously Bangladeshi cuisine.
Because it's the kind of thing where I looked it up and no one's ever had a safety problem. So obviously, with rice that gets room temperature, we're all worried about Bacillus cereus, right? And, that's why sushi is like acidified. But then if it's fermented enough, it'll have enough acidity that it's not going to... But I haven't found any cases of it being a problem.
No, we've eaten it. I've eaten it since I was young.
So it's got to be, right. But it's the kind of thing where if you tried to do it at a restaurant here, it would be like...
I think if you're doing it in a way where you're serving to the public and you're not in your home, you're like, going and checking on your rice and, whatever. If it's like, if you feel like you may leave it out too long, and then it could be an issue if you serve it. But if you have to be quite strict about it, I think you can't leave it like fermenting 2 days, and But then again, it's fermented, right? So it wouldn't necessarily like kill you. But
it's normally like a 12-hour problem.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So I think 12 hours or so is a good kind of time frame. So
I'm anxious to try it. Should I try it?
I think you should try it. You should try it, and leave some of the water in there, and definitely try it with that blackened chili, like fried chilies.
You like a really, really dark chili. Do the ones that you use not get bitter?
No, you know what? Funnily enough, you've got to have it at a high temperature and in plain kind of flavorless oil, neutral oil, and the red chilies, and not the Kashmiri chilies, which are mild. Try and get the kind of bird's eye chilies that are dried and red. They look like already deep red. So you've got to fry it until almost black. Not quite black, so just very dark brown. And then let them cool briefly before you crunch them up, because then they kind of like crisp up a lot more.
All right, so listen, I got to rip through some stuff because we're going to run out of time. So mustard oil, I know that you have to say that you can't use it, and you say put Coleman's like mustard powder in it. But really, does everyone just use the skincare one to cook with?
Yeah, like you have to use the mustard oil, basically. That's if
but
you
the
can't
one that's
find
not food grade, quote unquote, the one that's for...
Yeah, it's a pure mustard oil.
Yeah, it's because of erucic acid.
Exactly, but you're not going to. Nobody's going to drink like a bottle of mustard oil.
Listen,
so,
there are no data showing that humans are damaged by it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's everything. If you look at any kind of food item, it's probably risky if you have it in huge amounts. So I think you just have to use it as you would. Like just like that. You wouldn't drink a gallon of olive oil or any kind of oil.
You never know. All right, so you give me some serious FOMO with the Bangladeshi lemon, the Gandaraj Lebu. The scent just crazy good.
Oh my God, that is amazing. Sometimes, like if you go to the store, and you just touch the lemon and just run your thumb over it, it just has this amazing aroma. Like it's sweet, citrusy, and that's why it's called the king of flavors or king of scents. That's the name Gondaraj. And it's, you eat the rind itself, so not so much juice in it, but you eat the rind. So you take a bite when you're eating a meal like rice, for instance, or a biryani, or it pairs really well with fish and kind of not so rich dishes, fish or dal, things like that, or with the borta.
All right, and now you like white pepper. We'll have to agree to disagree on that. The standard Bangladeshi cardamom is black, though, not the green.
Yes, the standard one, green one is the everyday one, but the black cardamom you use for like biryanis and richer kind of curries and stews. But yeah, the green one is every day.
All right, so since we're not going to have time to talk about this, there's a fish recipe with clementine peel, which I thought was interesting. For those of you that want to not throw away all your clementine peels, maybe you should make the fish recipe with the clementine peel. There's a whole skinless chicken braised recipe. I want to know what you do with the skins, but I don't have that much time to know. What do you do with the skin?
I don't know. I just got my mum to take it off.
All right. You made me really want to have these cheese balls, Shandesh molded cheese balls.
Those are so good. Saffron and cardamom. So yeah.
Fresh cheese. She makes acid cheese, but then cooks it with the sugar until it gets less grainy and then molds them out. Got to do it. 5 spice. Bangladeshi 5 spice. I totally want to use that now.
Yeah, you got to. That just elevates any dish. Simple vegetarian saute. It just.
And the radhuni, the wild celery seed. How much different is it from regular celery seed or from ajwain?
Radhuni is more earthy. Definitely more earthy. I won't use that word a lot, but it's got a distinct flavour and it's not similar to regular celery seeds. So it's hard to get in the UK or anywhere. I got it from Bangladesh, so I was distributing amongst my friends, but it's got such a nice flavour, especially in red meat. So if you can get a hold of some, get the radhuni. The only time I used it in the UK was in a mixture of 5 spice or 6 spice, and I spent an hour trying to get a teaspoon of radhuni out, extract it from this bag.
All right, so we're going to have to do the mayonnaise later, John. I apologize. But one last thing on the way out. So I love culinary evolution that goes the same way in different places. So silbata grinder reminds me so much of a Mexican metate mano. Are they still used traditionally? How big a one do I need to get? It's when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, maybe I can get a good metate. Do you have one? Do you use one?
We have one, and we do use it not very often now because my mum used to use it quite a lot. But you can get them, like an A4 size, is a standard small one with the rolling pin type of thing.
How much better is the bigger one? I saw you can get one that's 15 inches long.
Well, if you can carry it and you need someone to carry it, those are much better. Medium size one, a good half of this table. I mean, my cookbook size. Doubled my cookbook size.
Yeah, I'm going to
that's the
stand. I mean, they're not cheap. They're not cheap.
No, they're not cheap. But you got to use it, and then it smooths out.
But how rough should I get it when I make it? How rough?
You'll take probably several goes to get it to the desired kind of consistency.
All right. Well, I definitely want one of those. Buy the book. It's beautiful. Dina, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And check her out tomorrow at MoFad, and come back anytime, please.
Great,
Cooking Issues.